have the trust in the state. You have to have the healthcare proxy. The first thing when we pulled her into the emergency room, where's the healthcare proxy? Who's the proxy person? My sister, she's the nurse. So, and the power of attorney, God forbid. I mean, my mother in the beginning, she went into the hospital. My sister thought this was the end because that's how bad she was. So we have things in place. We have the irrevocable trust. So God forbid we have everything in place. If God forbid she was so bad with this stroke, we would have had to put her in a facility and her assets and everything were taken care of. So it's very, very important, and you have to have that conversation. It's better to have the conversation when your parents start to turn 70 or 75, because after 75, I feel like that's when things start to change.
Okay.
You know? Okay. I think 75 is the magic number, even though people are living longer. Because of that, I think you can push the dial up to 75. I see people, it's interesting, when you talk to friends, everybody it's almost like when you have kids and the children, oh, my son's going to Harvard. Well, my son is the captain of the swim team. This happens even with your parents. Oh, really? Oh, I'm sorry to hear your mother can't walk. Oh, my father, he does like 8 miles on a bicycle. Everyone starts to, but you know what? That's all hogwash, and I don't wish anything bad on anybody's parents. But everyone's going to age, and some people may age at 75,
right?
And some people may age at 95, where they're going to need assistance. But if they live long enough, they're going to need some type of assistance. You need to have the conversation. I don't care what anyone says.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is very, very important. And Susan, talking to people and to families and caregivers, and, I feel as though it's a very difficult conversation to have. And I find that most people, when you throw out terms like trust and irrevocable trust and sort of protecting their assets and hard work and their sacrifices and things that they've built up for these years that you want to protect and preserve, families, can you share with me why you think, because you work with that community as well, and you work with elder planning in a certain respect, right? Why do you think it's such a difficult issue to bring up or to address?
Well, again, I think it depends on the person. I've seen different ways. I've seen some people, maybe because they're college educated, and maybe they understand a little bit more because they're college educated. They've done well for themselves, and they have a lot of bank accounts or stocks and this and that, so they know how to work with the financial advisor, and the financial advisor would probably promote for them to get trust in the state a person, so then they're guided through the process, so that they know how to plan, in other words. But then if you get someone that maybe, my grandfather, he was an immigrant to this country. He had education to 6th grade, maybe. Even though my grandfather was very savvy, he didn't really trust anybody. He was like, this is my money. I'm not going to talk about my money to anybody or anything like that. And no one really talks. As an immigrant, I don't know if some people really understand about estate planning and all.
Right.
We grew up in an immigrant family. No one's talking about estate planning.
Right.
We don't have family foundations and things like that. You're working hard to make ends meet. And you've done everything on your own, that I think people are afraid of looking at all of that or having those discussions, because it's like giving up their independence. Especially if you have to sign a trust over to your children, that's like almost feels like you're giving up your independence. And I think that's what people are afraid of, and they don't want to talk about that. Plus, no one really wants to talk about the demise. Who wants to talk about death?
Right.
No one wants to think about that.
We
put it off.
Yeah, in my interviews, that seems to be a constant theme about avoiding to talk about the inevitable. And I think that
my father, he was a smart man. And he had cancer for 12 years. He was in remission for almost 12 years. But when I would sit down and say, Dad, you have cancer and everything, we should talk about these things. And he says, yeah. And I'm like, well, do you have a will? Like, where is it? We need to know where these things are. And he said, it's a strong box, and your mother knows where everything is. And like I said, I turned to my mother, like, do you know? And she goes, I don't know. And then my father would chuckle, and he's like, she knows. And she didn't. And I knew she did it. So
Hmm.
So like I said, it was ironically the night before he died, we started talking about it again. And my father actually got a little angry with me. It's like, would you stop it? And blah, blah, blah. And my mother even said, Peter, listen to your daughter. Like, she works with the state planning
Uh-huh.
advisors and things like that. And she's like, she's concerned. You should talk about this. But no, he didn't want to talk about it. And then obviously, you talk about it to a certain point, then you don't want to aggravate someone. So you just say, okay, we'll wait for another time. I always thought like maybe there was like a moment or something.
Yeah. So, Susan, before your mom got the stroke, I want to go back to how did she get to medical appointments or make a medical appointments and or even transportation back and forth? How would that work out?
How we arrange her appointments and
Yeah,
stuff.
before the stroke. Yeah.
Oh, my sister. She's the nurse. She handles all the medical side of things for my mom. So my sister she's the one that makes sure that she has her appointments. Again, as they get older, I know my friends talk about this, that they feel like they go from one doctor to another with their parents,
Yes,
It's
yes, yeah,
interesting.
yeah. And
So my sister, yeah,
uh-huh.
she schedules all of that. She takes her, they'll bring the companion with them to help, because sometimes some of these doctors' offices, you can't just park and help them to the door. You have to like leave them off at the sidewalk and then drive to find a parking spot and all of that.
So Susan,
You got to rearrange your work schedules and stuff. It's a lot on the caretaker. I know a lot of people tell me, make sure you take care of yourself too, because you got to be strong for your mother. And if you don't feel well, obviously you can't. But I understand why people say that, and I appreciate it. But it's easier said than done, because it's almost like 24 hours. But yeah, a lot of
that's
things you have to do.
which leads me to the question I was about to ask you. So you've shared how proactive and very fortunate your mom is to have you and your sister, and how well you are doing, remarkably well, I should say, in providing the care for her, getting her the care, advocating for her, just to secure and ensure her best safety and her comfort. And you also highlighted that there are issues around, I mean, changing your whole schedule, right? Just to accommodate the care for elderly parents. So, how do you take care of yourself? How do you and your sister, or what ideas or what things you can think of that will really work for Susan and your sister so that you're taken care of as well, if that makes sense?
Right. Well, my sister, like today, she was like, I'm going to go for a manicure. Like little things like that maybe they don't take a lot of time, but at least something, is going to make you feel better. Little things like that, like maybe if you go for a quick massage, or I have a friend who his mother had 12 strokes. And I said, how do you, when my mom was, our health was starting to change, I said, how do you manage with your job and your mom and everything? And he goes, this is going to sound crazy. He goes, but like, I think it's once a year. He's like, I get a hotel room, and my siblings come when they take care of my mom, because he lives with his mom. And he said, I just go away. I stay overnight at a hotel.
Uh
He goes,
huh.
just to get away and decompress and everything. I go, really? He goes, yeah. I go, I can relate to that. I can see. I don't think that's such a crazy idea. But that's what he does.
Right.
I think the biggest thing, like for me, because fortunately, I don't know, I was having problems with plantar fasciitis with my feet, and it affected my back. And so my back is bothering me, but I get nervous because if I have to lift my mother up and stuff, it hurts my
Yes.
back. So I've been working with a rehab therapist, and just that once a week for an hour, like working with her, and she's helping me, makes my body, my back feel well, trying to get stronger, making
Yes.
sure lifting weights and everything. I know it sounds silly, but you have to be in good shape, because you're gonna have to lift them up. And even if my mother helps herself, it's still, you could feel pulling. Like these last 2 weeks, my sister and I were talking about how our shoulders were hurting us. That's probably the way we were pulling her up.
Uh huh.
It's probably affecting our joints and everything because we're not getting younger either.
Right. Yeah. That's a great point and a great suggestion as well. And I think it's the small steps that we can take to take care of ourselves, right? Like even going for a coffee hour with a friend, or it doesn't have to be martinis in the Hamptons or at a rooftop bar in Manhattan.
Nice.
Yes, that would be nice as well. But in the midst of sort of the chaos and sort of managing and juggling all these responsibilities, I think that's actually brilliant suggestion.
Well, we've been spoiled too. Like before the stroke, like my mom was a little bit of a party girl, so we would put her in the car and we would take her out to the Hamptons. You know, my sister is out that way, and so she would spend the week, and so that would give her a change of scenery, but also for my sister too, because she's living in Queens and then missing her house out in the Hamptons. So that helps. But my mother every Saturday night goes to the same restaurant and she sees some people from the neighborhood and things like that. So it's important too. You got to, if you can, try to get them out of the house. My mother would get her hair done and her nails. And so when she was in the hospital, everybody was asking for her. But it's good. And it's good for the caretaker too to be out and talking to people also, because if you're at home all day with them too, that could drive you crazy also.
No, I mean, these are, again, great pointers for a family caregiver. I mean, I think that you're in a very fortunate situation. The fact that you're knowledgeable about estate planning, the fact that your sister's a medical professional and has been in the industry, you're both educated, and your mom has through your dad and your mom, your parents have a nest egg, if you will. So, and I think that really, it helps in navigating.
Well, like I said, if you're middle class, you have to have some savings. Otherwise, you're in a pickle because Medicare only covers so much. You're not eligible for Medicaid. So you got to use your life. You have to use your life savings. So and that's not easy either. But I mean, I really think, like I had said in the beginning of the discussion, that this country really doesn't pay enough attention to the aging population, and it's the majority of the population now. It makes no sense. You look at other countries, like there's someone I work with that's from Norway, and he said that when you retire in Norway, you actually make more money when you're retired than when you're living, because that's how much support and everything that they give to the aging population, because they respect them. They respect them for all the hard work and the contributions that they made to the country. They don't just toss them aside because they're aging, they're older. Because you could see it. Sometimes you could even see it in the hospital, where the way they were talking to my mom, it's like, do you know how old she is? Or, like they wanted her to jump on the bed and turn right over. I'm like, Mother, she's vocal. She was like, excuse me, can you please give me a chance? I'm not 20 years old.
Right.
So I really think that there needs to be sensitivity and training more in healthcare for the aging population, and also more services, especially for the caretaker. Because I talk to a lot of people, and I really think a lot of people feel like they're on their own. And when I talk to them and share my story, they're like, you made me feel so much better, because I really thought I was the only one thinking this way, or I was in this boat. There's not enough support groups and stuff. That's why it's great that you're doing this project, because we need to get it out there that people need some support, both the caretaker and the elderly person. Like when we were in the hospital, the emergency room, my sister and I were saying, look, these poor people were by themselves. There was nobody with them.
Wow.
Taking care of them. And like you said, advocacy. Like you have to be, the elderly person needs an advocate. They don't have children or anything. They need a friend, a neighbor, somebody. And community is important. Like our communities are not the way they used to be, the neighborhoods and stuff. My mother's very fortunate on either side of her that when there were times when my mother was really living by herself and we weren't around, they would say, oh, we saw your mother out in the front doing blah, blah, blah. And we're like, what? And they're like, don't worry, so-and-so came over and she got stuck on a step and they helped her up the step. I mean, neighborhoods, communities, we should all be in together to help each other out. That helps the aging population too. And loneliness, especially during COVID and after COVID. If you have neighborhoods or parishes, like your pastor, your preacher, they should be coming to the aids of these people. There's so many of them alone. that don't have advocates. That's where religion, your religious community, should be there helping you. My mother, our pastor, we didn't hear from him the whole time she was in the hospital. Yet she supports her parish all the time. She's always there for her parish. Where was her parish when she needed them? Nowhere.
Wow.
So I think really everybody's got to be less selfish and to start thinking about the people that were older that have been there for them and contributed to this country.
Yes.
I think we need to respect them a little bit more.
Well, I think that, Susan, thank you very much for sharing your story and for the, remarkable work you're doing to take care of your mother. I know you love her. She means so much to you. And this is really a testament, right, to sort of you giving back, but at the same time, you're also working to take care of your own health and sort of sharing about that and sharing about your experience. I think I'm hoping that for the listeners, it would really help them and provide some guidance and tips and advice, because I've learned a lot by our conversation. So thank you very much, Susan.
Thank you.